Welcome back to Rule 8 Politics. My name is Jeremy Sammons, and today, and as always, I am joined by Zach Sacker. So, from our last episode, a lot has happened. The Georgia runoff for the Senate has came and went, and both John Ossoff and Reverend Warnock were declared the victor, which is crazy. That was one race that I was cautiously optimistic about. I didn't think the Democrats would win both seats. They did somehow. But then the next day on Wednesday, I think the American political landscape has been changed. I would say for the next 10 years, man. What do you think?
Even longer than that. Right away, Chuck Schumer was comparing this to Pearl Harbor, as a day that will live in infamy. And I actually think he's right about that. I think this day will make the history books as one of the darkest days in modern American history. Pearl Harbor, 9/11, uh, Wednesday, January 6th. And probably the assassinations of Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy. Those will be the darkest days, I think, in modern American history. And it's going to be hopefully it's going to be a turning point where things are going to get better after this, but it's still way too early to say. Um, things could get worse, which is the scariest part of this. But regardless, yeah, uh, this will be a day. January 6th of 2021 will be a day that uh, we will remember for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, it was.
It was the first time since the War of 1812 that the capital was occupied, essentially. Right? You said that to me in a text, and I was working. I was working on Wednesday. I was driving around a little bit, so I had it on, in the car. Whenever I was in the car, I was in and out. I wasn't able to really follow the media all day. And you sent me this text. The capital's been occupied, first time since the War of 1812. And when I saw that, I was like, "Holy shit! Something serious is going down right now." Um, and and yeah, I would have never imagined we would come to this. Very something profound happened for sure.
Yeah. In our last episode, when we were talking about what we thought was going to go down on Wednesday, I mean, fuck. We knew tensions were going to be high. We knew things were going to get crazy. But I don't think anybody fathomed how crazy it was actually going to be. That was way
Hmm.
beyond anything that I expected. They actually stopped the count. That was
Hmm.
when I finally had that realization that holy shit, they actually did it. That was when I was like, man, this is
Yeah.
we are now in new territory. This is the other side of I'm not entirely sure what, but we are not in Kansas anymore.
That's for sure. Um, they stopped the count, but seeing the Congress work, into the wee hours of the morning to finish that count once they kicked out all the protesters, that honestly, as embarrassing as the events were on January 6th, I felt embarrassed to be an American. Okay, and that takes a lot for me to say because I really love this country. I think it's the greatest in the world. Um, I was very embarrassed. I felt like we were living in a banana republic. But to see the Congress resume their business, finish out their duty, and formally elect Joe Biden, or confirm the election of Joe Biden, that I think restored a tremendous amount of confidence, not only in me, but I think in a lot of people. I was proud to see them to see the system work. There is a silver lining, I think, in that even though this assault on our democracy was something that y- was just unbelievable. You know what I mean? I don't think um, 5 years ago, okay, before Donald Trump, because there are many people who said, while on inauguration day, that this guy was gonna try to stay in power forever. Before Donald Trump, 5 years ago, I don't think anybody would have ever imagined that there would be an anti-democratic coup to try to overthrow our government in 5 years. I don't think anybody would have believed that person, and that's essentially what happened. This was a failed coup attempt, in my opinion. Um,
Before we get too far into what the insurrection that happened on Wednesday, it all started at the Save America March, which somewhere between 3 and 20,000 people showed up to voice their.
it's a large range there.
Yeah, I'm surprised that we can't get the number like a little more accurate here. Between 3 and 20,000 people showed up to make their voices heard that they dispute the election results in many swing states. Now, a lot of people I guess, in the conservative realm, are claiming that the language that was used by Donald Trump Jr. and by Donald Trump was not inflammatory, that they did not incite violence. However, I think with a lot of things with Donald Trump and the way he speaks and the way he communicates, he insinuates things and like speaks between the lines. Like we all heard his call with who was that guy down in Georgia that he was it the Secretary of State that he was speaking with down there?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
so yeah,
Yes.
I mean, he didn't ask him to commit voter fraud, but he asked him to commit voter fraud, right? It was very.
Right.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I didn't say it, but you know, well, so I'd like to. I took some. I listened to Donald Trump Jr.'s and Donald Trump's speech, and I took some notes on some things that they said that I think that this is how you can say that, yeah, the words that they use, the wording that they use was inflammatory, and that what happened afterwards should have not came as a surprise. So this is from Donald Trump Jr. here, and like the way that I took these notes was just every time I heard something that I was like, well, that's not what you want to, how you want to rile up a crowd. All right, so these are in order, but not necessarily. That these are different cuts, different parts of his speech here. So this is from Donald Trump Jr. He says, the fact that you are all here should be a message to all the Republicans who have not been willing to actually fight the people who do nothing to stop the steal. This gathering should send a message to them that this isn't their Republican Party. This is Donald Trump's Republican Party. It's not going to roll over and die just because the Democrats would like you to. You have an opportunity today. You can be a hero or you can be a zero. The choice is yours, but we are all watching. Choose wisely, because if you just roll over, if you don't fight, and the crowd at that moment begins chanting, fight for Trump. We're coming for you, and we're going to have a good time doing it. We have to start fighting like the Democrats do. Our reluctance to do that is why we are in this position today. Today, you get to pick a side. Stay in this fight. Don't be suppressed. Don't be put in your corner. Stand up and fight. Hold your representatives accountable. That's a pretty fiery language there. That's just
Yes.
from
Absolutely.
Junior. So
Wow.
I'd like to yeah. So next up, I got some stuff that Donald Trump said. He says these.
One comment I do want to make on what Junior said, actually.
Uh,
uh, Donald Trump is the Republican Party. He said something along those lines, right?
yeah.
That's basically, kind of out of like any kind of authoritarian playbook to say that the leader, is the party and the party is the country. I mean, that's fascism 101 right there.
Yeah,
That's kind of alarming, that kind of language being used.
right. And also, I mean, like to talk about rolling over and dying. I mean, that's essentially kind of what the Republican Party did to Donald Trump. During
Mhm.
the national convention, the Republican Party no longer has their own platform. It's whatever Donald Trump wants to do.
Yeah.
Like they allowed
Yep.
this to happen. So, all right. So
Mhm.
moving on to Donald Trump and some things that he said on Wednesday. Said these people are not going to take it any longer. We will never give up. We will never concede. Our country has had enough and we will not take it anymore. We will stop the steal. Third world countries have more honest elections. We're not going to let them silence your voices. We're not going to let it happen. So if Rudy's got guts, he fights. If Mike Pence does the right thing, we win the election. We're here to save our democracy. We're going to have someone in there who should not be in there, and our country will be destroyed. And we're not going to stand for that. There's so many weak Republicans. Many of them I helped. It's amazing. The weak Republicans, pathetic Republicans. You are the real Americans. The weak Republicans, you got a lot of them who put America last. You have to get your people to fight. We don't have free and fair elections. We don't have a free press. They have become the enemy of the people. Third world countries wouldn't even attempt to do what we caught them doing. Republicans are fighting with one arm behind their back, and we are going to have to fight harder. We're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to be strong. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing. Our country has been under siege for a long time. We're out here fighting. History is going to be made. If they do the wrong thing, we should never forget. Your leadership has led you down the tubes. We will not be intimidated into believing the hoax and lies. They're going out of their way to hurt this country. Let the weak ones get out. It's time for strength. The radical left knows exactly what they're doing and they're ruthless. And it's time that somebody does something about it. This is a criminal enterprise. Don't listen to the rhinos and the stupid people. Today is not the end, it is just getting started. Now, if that is not
That
inflammatory
is some
language,
scary.
yeah,
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 that's some dark shit
yeah,
right there.
yeah. If he did not incite a riot with that speech, I don't know what the fuck he did.
Yeah, I mean, he literally told them to go down to the Capitol, and he said he would be there with them, and essentially, put pressure on them. Put pressure
Hmm.
on Pence to do the right thing, which we all know would have actually been the wrong thing, something that he doesn't even have the power to do. Um, they wanted Mike Pence to essentially declare Donald Trump the winner and disregard the certification process essentially altogether, just because Pence was presiding over the certification process. Um, it's just crazy, And once again, I'm sounding like a broken record here. It's unbelievable that this is what happened in the United States of
Yeah,
America. Um, and he's making a comparison to third world countries. I mean,
yeah,
what he encouraged his supporters to do is what happens in third world countries. Um, there was no evidence of voter fraud. The election was not stolen. That's all false. It's BS. And one other point I want to make here is there's talk about how much culpability there is for Trump. Did he um, incite the violence or not? Um, there's something else that really sticks out to me, and it poses a major question, and that was this planned ahead of time for there to be violence? And did Trump have knowledge about that? Because there were people there who had guns, who had bombs. They found a car with 11 explosive devices in it. Um,
Hmm.
there were pipe bombs planted at both the RNC and the DNC, something that the media is not talking all that much about. I mean, they've mentioned it. All the major news sources have acknowledged this, but they're not talking about it all that much. I think because they're still investigating it. Um, but that tells you that this was just not a speech or a regular rally or something that everyone was just going to go to, have a good time, and then go back home. There were people in that crowd who knew that something was going to go down afterwards, and they were prepared.
Hmm.
So was that being communicated with Trump, or with Trump's team around him? Was this a coordinated effort? Um,
They
that's
had to have
something I
known.
really want to know.
They had to have known.
You think so? So you think Trump knew of the pipe bombs and stuff? You're saying?
No, I mean, I think, well, man, if Trump is not in touch with what's going on with the base, I mean, that would just baffle me. Like Trump doesn't know what's going on with the MAGA base. I mean, ever since his
Hmm.
presidency, I mean, there's been talks of conspiracy theories about overthrowing the government and rounding up
Hmm.
pedophiles and putting Nancy Pelosi in jail along with Hillary Clinton. All this crazy shit, right? Like the
Yeah.
undercurrent, like the stuff is just like just beneath the surface of what exists in MAGA came to the surface. Like what they really think and what they
Yeah.
really want. We got to see it in
Yeah.
action. Like what people have been saying, like what people that've been accusing MAGA of, we really got to see it in action.
Hmm.
Like all these
And
fucking cute people out there, Jesus Christ! Like it's, I mean,
yeah.
obviously it's gonna on the last day to actually do something. It shouldn't shock anyone what happened.
Hmm. And if there is a silver lining, it's that hopefully bringing all this out into the daylight is really going to encourage a lot of people who were on the fence about how they felt about Trump uh, to really move off that fence onto the right side. You know, um, hopefully this will be the end of Trumpism in America. Uh, because that was some really crazy shit. And I mean, I don't know how anybody could stick by Trump's side after that.
Yeah,
I mean, there definitely will be people who do, but I just, it's just kind of beyond me how you could still support that guy. Um, and and plus, there's a lot of Republican senators who want to be president in 2024.
hmm,
It actually kind of makes sense to me for them to come out against Trump now, even if it took them so long to do so, because I guess we're going to talk about impeachment eventually. If Trump is impeached again and convicted in the Senate, last time he wasn't convicted in the Senate, but if he is this time, that will open up a lane for these Republicans who might want to run for president in the future because Trump will be barred from holding public office if the Senate convicts him. So um, I'm optimistic that this will be the end of Trumpism. But
mm.
I don't know. There's a very good chance. Trump is saying this isn't the end; it's only the beginning. And I do think he enjoys rallies, and he will continue to have rallies. Just hopefully the crowd gets really, really small and insignificant.
Yeah. I mean, man, it's anything is possible. I would don't don't underestimate MAGA and what's possible with them. Like,
Hmm.
so I mean, even after all the craziness that went down on Wednesday, you had 68% of the House, 68% of the House, well, the Republicans, 138 Republicans vote in objection to the Pennsylvania results. That's insane.
Yeah,
138 people after
yeah.
everything that happened that day,
Hmm.
they still objected to certifying that vote. And then also, I bet they also was it how many senators did we have? A lot of senators backed out, and then I'll give those guys credit for backing out. We still have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 Republican senators that still continued to object to certification between Arizona and Pennsylvania.
Yes. Yeah, Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Tommy Tuberville, Cindy Hyde Smith, Roger Marshall, and John Kennedy objected to Arizona's results. And Hawley, Cruz, Tuberville, Hyde Smith, Marshall were joined by Cynthia Loomis and Rick Scott in objecting to Pennsylvania's results. 4 Republican senators did change their mind after Wednesday's events. Those were Marsha Blackburn, Kelly Loeffler, who is an outgoing senator from Georgia, James Lankford, and Steve Daines. And yes, we should give them credit for seeing the light. And also, I think it's worth mentioning that there are at least 5 Republicans in the Senate who are calling for Trump's immediate resignation or impeachment. They want him gone before January 20th. And those are Lisa Murkowski, Adam Kinzinger. Actually, he's a House member. I'm sorry. Lisa Murkowski, Mitt Romney, Ben Sass, and Pat Toomey all want Trump out immediately. And I have Adam Kinzinger on here as well, although he is in the House, but he's been pretty outspoken. What do you think is going to happen? Is he going to be impeached and convicted, or do you think the 25th Amendment is going to come into play, or will he just serve out the remainder of his presidency? What's your prediction?
I don't think there's enough time to really do anything. I don't think they're going to enact the 25th. I heard some people talking about enacting the 14th Amendment, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which would get rid of, presumably get rid of Trump and also get rid of the senators or anyone else who supported. Right, I guess they would have to make the case that they actually did support insurrection, and then that would remove them as well. But I was reading.
I haven't heard that argument. The 14th Amendment. I'll have to look into that one. Do you have that in front of you? What the? Geez, it sounds bad. I'm not even.
Yeah.
I guess it would have to do with something that came right after the Civil War. I think. Right. I think the 13th bans slavery, and what is the 14th? What's the 14th Amendment? If you have it right in front of you.
All right, so Section 3 of the 14th Amendment states, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States under any state who have previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer to support the Constitution of the United States, or shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. Mm-hmm. So that's what they would be.
So that was one of those Civil War amendments that came in right after the Civil War. Kind of to prevent, I guess, ex-Confederates from becoming members of Congress. And I do think that there were still a few that somehow slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, which we are in unprecedented times that we really have to dig out some of these crazy Civil War laws, because I guess they're relevant. I mean, they're relevant to the conversation.
Yeah.
So I mean, do I think they're going to take the route of the 14th? Maybe. Like, will anything happen from that? Like, do I expect Hawley and Cruz to be removed? No, I don't. Do I expect Pence in the cabinet to pull the 25th? I don't. Do I think that they'll impeach him? Yes, I definitely think they'll impeach him. I don't think that we have 10 days or 9 now really to remove the guy from office. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, there could be. I mean, it's possible he could resign. That might be the best thing for him to do.
For him and for the country.
Yeah. But I don't think we're going to see that either. What was it? Clyburn, he was saying that he expects the impeachment stuff to be like finished after Biden's first 100 days. So like at that point, like
Hmm.
what's the point? Like I guess if you once
Well,
you if you want to guarantee that he can't run for office again, or be denied Secret Service
bingo.
protection, like if that stuff is really important, then I guess that's the avenue you have to pursue. But I think 100 days after the 20th, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, there's going to be so much going on, man. That might
Hmm.
I mean, that's not going to be the burning issue in everyone's mind, and I don't think.
Yeah. But we have to get there first. And I think there's still a lot of concern that Donald Trump, today, as of this recording, this is January 10th, and I usually release these the day after. Um, but as of now, he still is the most powerful person in the world and will be for another 10 days. And he basically supported an insurrection against this country. And who knows what else he's planning, if he is planning something else. I do think that there is a major risk in allowing him to stay in office, especially if there's a good chance that he's going to be brought up on criminal charges once he's out of office.
Mhm.
And there was a possibility these their charges were going to get brought up against him before what happened. And now there's even more talk about this. Pat Toomey, a Republican senator, today said that he thinks that there's a possibility that Trump did something criminal and could be liable. So, if you're Trump and you're thinking that there's a good chance you're going to be sitting in prison for the rest of your life, um, you know, that basically might mean that he should do whatever he can to stay in office so he doesn't have to go to jail. And that's a scary thing.
Mhm.
So I do think that it's important that number one, I think hopefully he just resigns, but I don't think that's going to happen. The next best thing I think is Mike Pence invoking the 25th Amendment, which was basically put in place in the event of the president becoming incapacitated. There actually is a legal debate whether or not the 25th Amendment would even be relevant here. But I don't really know how that debate would play out, and being that there's only 10 days left, even him just temporarily um, losing his powers under the 25th, I think would be, a big help because we just got to make it to the 20th. Um,
Mm.
because the 25th Amendment was basically, what happens if the president gets sick and he's in a coma or something and he's unable to fulfill the duties of being a president. In that case, the vice president would take over. Um, the problem here is that Donald Trump is able to perform the duties of being president. That's why everyone's so afraid,
Mhm.
right? Um, Not because he's in a coma. So, there is a legal question on whether or not the 25th would even be able to be invoked, but it should be attempted. Um, and impeachment is important. The House is supposedly gonna um, submit their impeachment paperwork tomorrow already. So on Monday. So hopefully that gets reviewed and voted on right away. It will definitely pass the House because the Democrats control the House, and there's going to be a lot of Republicans that support the impeachment effort as well, unlike the last time. And then it's up to the Senate to convict him or not. I mean, I don't see why they can't do this before the end of the week. There's just no reason. I mean, Washington moves slow as shit, so
Mhm.
it's probably not going to get done just because they're slow, and because I think Mitch McConnell is going to probably do what he can to deflect things a little bit. He just won re-election, so he's good for another 6 years. It's not like he's got an immediate election concern. Um, and but there are quite a few Republican senators that I think would join the Democrats here in voting to convict him. Quite a few of them have already come out and already went over the list, but that's just who we know.
Right.
There's a few that have been quiet. They haven't given definitive answers one way or another. Let the House do what they got to do, get it done, move it over to the Senate immediately, and let the Senate vote. This has to move forward. And I think it's important that Trump not be able to seek public office again, although that does present other problems, which we can't get into.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going on for a while here.
But I think if they, well, if we, or when we decide that impeachment's going to be the route we're going to take, I mean, think of how long the last impeachment process took with the whole Mueller investigation. And I mean, that was not like a quick process. That took a long time. And I'm sure there'd be a whole
Well,
investigation into who knew what and whose involvement with
mhm.
everything. Yeah, I think it'd be a long, drawn out
well,
thing. Which I'm not saying. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying I wouldn't expect it to be a quick process.
well, it's different this time because Congress, all the individual Congress people were witnesses to what happened. They were there. So there's no need to call in witnesses to question for this. Everybody experienced it firsthand. Trump incited a mob to come storm the Capitol, and they all saw it firsthand. So this could get the ball, and this could move very quickly if they have the will to do it. And apparently, the articles of impeachment are already drafted by the House. It just needs to be put to a vote, and I think they're going to do that tomorrow already, I believe. Of course, I think things will get slowed down once it moves over to the Senate. Um, I don't think Mitch McConnell really wants to have a vote on it, but I think I think I think his mind could change. Once the House does its job. I really don't know. I don't know if this would be able to get done fast or not. But I think the House could be done doing what they have to do within a day or so. Really, it's just whether or not the Senate takes it up. That's really the question.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Um, I think also it's man, it's a dangerous time to be an elected official right now, and especially a Republican that may or may not be in line with the president. I just see those videos of Mitt Romney and Lindsey Graham getting harassed in the airport.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
that's going to
Oh yeah.
be if you're not on Team Trump, expect that to
Even
happen to
Mike
you.
Pence.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were chanting
hang Mike Pence.
hang Mike Pence, and they brought a noose.
Yeah,
They had a noose.
yeah. I mean, that was
So
definitely premeditated. They didn't they didn't build the fucking gallows
yeah,
on a whim when they were down there. No, they
right,
came down like ready with that thing.
right, right. Yeah, it was a full-on gallows. Not just a noose on a tree. This was something that was constructed out of wood and had the noose. Scary shit, man. I mean, yeah, there was definitely a lot of premeditation that went
Mhm,
into this for sure, and
mhm.
they had to have known. The people at the top. They had to have known. You know,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, I
people have
would
been
say that
saying
it's.
for years.
I would say like right now it is a given. It is a given that there will be political assassinations against members of Congress who turn their back on Donald Trump. I would it would I would my mind would be blown if everyone comes out of this alive.
That's scary stuff, man. And last week you correctly predicted that there would be blood on Wednesday, and
Yeah.
you were right. You said there will be deaths, and you were right. So hearing you make this prediction is very alarming to me. Um, nobody deserves to die. No matter what role they played in this.
Right. And given that fact, I mean, it also makes it it makes it not surprising that so many Republicans in the House voted in favor to oppose the certification, because I think it's
Yeah,
seriously, people will come after them if they voted not to. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I
scary
mean,
shit.
don't underestimate MAGA, what they're capable of. But yeah, we talked about, or we briefly mentioned the deaths here. So let's hang out here a moment and talk about those who
Hmm.
lost their lives.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, especially that officer, um, Brian Sicknick, Officer Sicknick. My heart definitely goes out to him and his family. Um, the man was
Yeah,
supposedly hit in the
savagely
head with a
beaten.
fire extinguisher. Yeah. Um, and uh, the people on the right are supposed to be the ones that are on the side of the police, right? I mean, as they were raiding the Capitol, they had thin blue line flags with them. That's the American flag with the one blue line to
Mhm.
show support to the police. I, I mean, you can't say that you support the police at the same time you're killing them. So a lot of hypocrisy.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I just feel horrible. Yeah, and there were a few other deaths too.
Right.
If you
But
want
there
to
was an
go
officer
through
that
them.
Howard, I think you pronounce his last name Liebengood, a 15-year veteran of the U.S. Capitol Police. He committed suicide today.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, I heard that.
the details on that haven't come
Sad.
out yet, but that's another tragic loss of life. Also, during the
Hmm.
insurrection, 35-year-old Ashley Babbitt, she was gunned down while trying to storm the chambers of Congress.
Hmm.
Which Air Force veteran.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. An Air Force veteran storming the chambers of Congress, gunned down.
Air Force veteran and QAnon enthusiast.
Yeah.
Supposedly she was a huge Trump supporter and believed in the QAnon conspiracy theories.
Mhm.
Um, and that stuff will just really just chew up your mind and radicalize you. And a lot of these people had QAnon t-shirts and sweatshirts on and whatnot.
Mhm.
And it seems to be a theme that a common uh, denominator among a lot of these rioters was the Q stuff. Anyway,
Yeah.
continue.
But yeah. Also, Roseanne Boylan, 34, trampled to death, and then those were the real tragic ones. And then also,
Hmm.
Benjamin Phillips, 50 years old, had a stroke at the event, and then a Kevin Greason suffered a heart attack. Those are Uh, I
Yeah.
guess one could make the argument that the events of the day had worked these two people up so much that pushed them over the edge. Guy had a heart attack and a guy had a stroke
Yeah.
from the excitement of
I think.
insanity.
Yeah. I think at least one of them, one of those two, had a history of high blood pressure
Mhm.
and whatnot. So it was like overexcitement, and the guy just collapsed. Um, but again, I really feel bad for the officer. The girl who got shot. I mean, nobody deserves to die or anything. But if you're storming a federal building and there are people there pointing guns saying, "Don't enter, get back," and you disobey them, what the hell do you think's going to happen? You
Mhm.
know? And if she wasn't shot, that doorway would have been breached, and who knows? Maybe they would have got to the senators and the Congress, the House members. They were essentially, while all these people are trying to get in, this is where the vote certification was taking place. Congress was in session. It was a joint session of Congress. Imagine they got in while Congress was still in the building. That would have been really bad, So I mean, that officer who shot the lady, I don't think we know who it was at this point, but I don't really think he did anything wrong, to be honest with you. Even though the lady was unarmed, she was illegally entering a building, and a signal had to be sent to the rest of the intruders that you can't pass beyond this point. It's sad to say, but I don't necessarily think he made a mistake in doing that.
No, I mean, the fact of the matter is they were trying to enter the House when it was in session. That was their goal, was to get in there with our Congress people. And what they would have done with them when they got there, who the fuck knows? But they came planned for it. I mean, you had the guy there with zip ties. You had people getting arrested with firearms on them inside the Capitol. There was plans.
Yeah.
They were ready to go all the way.
Firearms, zip ties, bombs. Don't forget, this was a planned coup d'état. There's no doubt about it. It was an insurrection. It was a coup d'état. It was, and it failed. And again, tying this to Trump, when this first happened, he was pretty quiet for like the first few hours, and it was really only after it seemed like Congress was already out and the police are starting to push back the rioters that Trump says on Twitter, "All right, everybody, go home. We love you, but go home." It was kind of after the fact. He didn't really discourage it when they were first beginning to storm the building.
What do you think it would have been like had he actually marched with the people like you said he was going to? Do you think he actually would have pulled the reins back on the chaos, or do you think he would just put gas on the fire?
Gas on the fire. But I don't think he would have put himself in that position. I don't think because that would have opened him up to harm. And I don't think he would have done that. So another lie. He's willing to lie to his own people. Don't wear a mask.
Right. Yeah.
Supposedly these when they were planning this rally and telling people that we're gonna, go to the Capitol and whatnot, they were telling people not to wear masks even.
Trumpism is really a death cult now, isn't it? Like if you're MAGA, you are a member of a death cult.
It was really sad seeing the Confederate flag inside the Capitol building. Along with neo-Nazi T-shirts. That's another one. There were people with neo-Nazi T-shirts. Camp Auschwitz was one of them. That's disturbing shit.
Right. Yeah. 6 million wasn't enough. The Kekistan flag. That's some dark shit.
Yeah. Oh man. It's absolute desecration. The guy who looted the Nancy Pelosi's podium, he's been caught and arrested. Another guy they found today who was chasing a Capitol police officer around the inside of the building. They caught him. They seem to be catching a decent amount of these people, which is good. They all deserve. People need to go to prison over this.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. That's I got some statistics from the LA Times. So this was as of January 7th. So it's not the most up to the date information here, but they had a graph for which violations and what charges were against the pro-Trump rioters. Most of them curfew violations. 64 people arrested for curfew violations. Unlawful entry, 37 people. Carrying a pistol without a license, 6. Possession of unregistered ammunition, 5, which is, I don't know how you register ammunition. That's interesting. Possession of a large capacity ammunition feeding device, 4. Assault on a police officer, only 3 as of January 7th. Only 3 on that. Uh, Defacing property, there's 2. Possession of a prohibited weapon, there's 2. Crossing a police line, there was 1. And there was a possession of a firearm on Capitol grounds, there was 1. And then intoxication, riots, resisting arrest, unregistered firearm, and that's basically the charges that were against these people. I'm surprised there's only one for intoxication. That's interesting.
Yeah, right. Oh man, you see that video of the cop getting crushed in the doorway?
Oh my god! If that's not one of the most disturbing videos I've seen, I mean, heartbreaking.
Yes, that's exactly
Heartbreaking.
what I was going to see. That by far the most disturbing thing I've ever seen on regular TV, on cable TV. When I first saw that, I stopped what I was doing and like my heart started beating, and I just holy shit! And they were like heave hoeing in unison,
It's
trying to
madness.
crush this guy. Yeah, oh, insane, man. Really, really sad.
Mm-hmm.
It actually, this whole event, man, put me into like a really bad funk all week. I was in a pretty bad mood for quite a few days. Feeling a little bit better today, but yeah, just crazy stuff.
Yeah. Well,
What do you
I'd
think's
say
going to
I think
happen with? I was going to
happen
ask
with
you, what do
what?
you think's going to happen with? What do you think's going to happen with the members of Congress who are accused of like egging on the pro-Trump rioters?
The media is just going to drag him through the dirt. And I think that's going to be the extent of what
Mm.
happens. Like for Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, their supports, their support structure in their home states, I don't think is enough to be shifted away. Like Missouri was such a red state. All right, the divide was already in Missouri, right? Like there's no Democrats that were really going to be persuaded to vote for Josh Hawley to begin with in the first place. Uh, there was, and I think really if Josh Hawley turns his back on Trump, that would definitely put a target on his back to be primaried out. Same thing with Ted Cruz, I think, down in Texas. A lot of people in Texas, obviously a majority of people in Texas love Ted Cruz. That's why he keeps getting reelected in his district. Like, do you really think that the actions of what happened on Wednesday was enough to take away support for Ted Cruz?
Well, there could be support now from the other side. They could be primaried by Republicans who are not Trump Republicans. Basically saying, look at these cowards. They basically, you know, towed the line for Trump, pushed his lies and bullshit, almost caused a civil war. I mean, I think there's a very strong case to be made for a primary challenger to both these guys. Whether or not
let's
it
also,
happens,
yeah.
we'll see.
I think, let's be honest too, there is a lot of people that support civil war, especially in Texas. That's, I mean,
Mhm.
when you talk about secession in modern America, no one talks about secession like Texas talks about secession. Like, that's
Yeah. Yep.
something to be taken
That's true.
seriously. Same, I mean, like California talks about secession, the Northeast talks about secession. I mean, Texas is like old school advocating for secession,
Yeah.
and I think there's a lot of people in that fit that demographic that want to see Ted Cruz not change at all. Same thing with Josh Hawley.
That's true.
Yeah, it's I mean,
Cruz did have a tight election. No, Texas is changing. It's becoming bluer. By the election, every election is the trends are definitely in the Democrats' favor here. I wouldn't be surprised if 2024. I mean, we'll have to see who's running on both sides, but
mhm.
Texas could go blue pretty soon. Ted Cruz, his reelection was actually fairly close. I don't remember the exact percentages, but he was up against what's his name? We're gonna take away your guns. Hell yeah, yeah. Beto O'Rourke, uh, and he had a pretty narrow win over Beto.
Mm-hmm.
So things are changing here.
Yeah. Beto definitely overperformed, I felt, in that election. Um,
Yeah.
And Beto O'Rourke, that's a whole other conversation. Interesting guy.
Yeah.
I was there in Iowa the day he dropped out. Man, I felt absolutely terrible for the people who came to see him. And people traveled across the country to Iowa to stand in support with him. He was like, "Oh, sorry guys, I'm out."
I didn't understand it, man. Like what that guy was thinking. He lost the Senate race, so he thinks he's qualified to be president.
Yeah, I think a similar thing is going to happen.
When does that make sense?
Well, I think a similar thing is going to happen to John Ossoff. I think this attention is going to go to his head. He's going to think he's hotter shit than what he actually is. He's going to run for president and be made a fool of.
Yeah, well, he actually won. You know?
Oh yeah. Good point.
Beto lost. He lost that Senate race.
Well, I think just like it's just like fucking Amy McGrath, where like the support is misconstrued. Like people, all right, Democrats hate Ted Cruz more than they like Beto O'Rourke. Like same thing with like Purdue. People hate Purdue more than they like John Ossoff. People hate Mitch McConnell more than they like Amy McGrath. Yeah. I think it's just that's the way national politics works nowadays. All politics are national. All politics are local.
Yep. Very true. Do you think that we're talking about succession and stuff and changes to I guess the country at large? You think DC is going to become a state now?
Ooh, yeah. I think, it's going to happen. It will happen in the next 4 years. Well, actually, they better do it quick. If they don't do it within the next 2 years, it's probably not going to happen.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking within the next year and a half, we're going to see a major push to make Washington D.C. its own state. It's a prediction.
If the Democrats are serious, I mean, they need to jump on it now and get that ball rolling. Because the iron's hot right now, and in 2 years, there's still a strong possibility that Republicans are going to win back either the Senate or the House. So if they're going to do
they'll have the advantage because
the
advantage always goes to the party that doesn't hold the White House. So midterm elections favor the party that's not in the White House, which will be Republicans in 2022. And the reason why we're talking about Washington, D.C. possibly becoming a state now is because the mayor wasn't able to call in the National Guard because it's a federal city. She doesn't have that kind of power. But if she was the governor, then she would have been able to call in the National Guard and put down the riots much quicker. A lot of criticism about how the police handled the riots and everything.
Yeah.
There's talk about some officers possibly colluding with the terrorists. I'm just going to call them terrorists because that's what they were. I do you think that there was any collusion? What are your thoughts on that?
So I mean, everybody's seen the videos now of the cops either like standing down and inviting them past barricades, inviting them inside the Capitol. I think what's important, like the way that I felt about it when I saw those videos, is these police were terrified of the crowd. Most of the time, it was one cop versus thousands of people, and any rational person.
So you
in that situation would have
done
the same fucking thing. All right. It's
right.
Yeah. I mean, what sane person by themselves is going to fight back thousands of fucking people? No one. Right. So I think that's a lot of what we saw happen on Wednesday was just a complete breakdown because there was no police support in these certain certain key
Yeah,
aspects, or certain
that's
areas.
something that needs to be investigated. Why were there so few police on the premises? They knew that there was a threat. There was talk of having this major rally you know, for days, if not weeks ahead of time. They should have been prepared. That is worthy of
Right.
investigation. But yeah, there's these videos like you talked about with appearing the cops playing nice with the protesters, letting them through. If they're that badly outnumbered, they have to think of themselves first. They got families they're trying to go home to. Um, it's like the cops kneeling for the BLM protesters,
Mhm.
and whatnot. As they're saying, "You're a white supremacist," they're kneeling or marching with them. I mean, sometimes you kind of gotta go along just so you don't get your ass beat. Just to appease the crowd a little bit. Um, I mean, I get we're kind of comparing apples and oranges here, two different things, but it's very similar. Those videos do not necessarily mean that the police were colluding. However, um, there is still concern that there may have been a few cops who was sympathetic and did help out. James Clyburn, you mentioned him before. I saw him, I think it was on CNN yesterday, talking about how somehow the rioters knew where his office was, and supposedly he doesn't have a name up on his door, but somehow they knew where to find his office. So
Interesting.
they could have only done that if they had inside information.
Hmm.
So, maybe it wasn't the police, so it could have been information they obtained from members of Congress.
Yeah.
There were some members of Congress egging these people on, people in the crowds. What's this guy's name? Hang on here. Congressman Paul Gosar from Arizona, Wednesday morning, right before the rampaging started, sent out a picture looking like he was in the crowd. I could be wrong because I think he would have been with the rest of Congress at this time. So maybe it was just a picture that somehow he got. But he sends out this tweet of basically it looked like he was in the crowd in the sea of Trump supporters and said Biden should concede. I want his concession on my desk tomorrow morning. Don't make me come over there.
Oh.
That's what he tweeted at like
Oh.
11 a.m. So it's very possible that they were members of Congress that were working with these rioters too.
Yeah. You know, I think also what I haven't seen any media reports on it, but I think with the House being in session and with or the joint session being in session and with them having to be evacuated, I think that's probably where a lot of the police presence went, was with them to protect
Yeah.
them. You know what I mean? That like
Mm-hmm.
probably a majority of the police that were on the campus at that time were sent to protect our Congress people and their aides, which we're
Yeah.
talking hundreds of
Good
people.
call.
Yeah, so I think when the investigations launched and finalized, that's what they're going to find probably mostly. I'm not saying that other shenanigans didn't happen. There seem to be some, but I think that's probably what most
Mm-hmm.
likely happened. Um, Speaking of other people doing stupid shit while they were there, there was this Derek Evans guy. He was uh, a member of the West Virginia House of Delegates. He was a guy that live streamed himself at this event. Uh, Say, so he was caught on this live stream saying things like, "They're making an announcement right now saying if Pence betrays you, you better get your mind right because we're storming that building." And then later on, he says he's live streaming on Facebook. He enters the Capitol. He says, "We're in." He says in his video, "We're in. Derek Evans is in the Capitol."
Wow. What an idiot.
Make no mistakes. My name is Derek Evans. I'm from West Virginia, House of
Yeah.
Delegates. I am in the Capitol. So yeah, he got
What an
arrested.
idiot.
Uh, but speaking of other people that were arrested, this Christopher Alberts, guy of Maryland, he was carrying a handgun on him, which is not legal to do in D.C., especially not inside the
Right.
Capitol.
Right.
There was this Cleveland Grover Meredith dude. He got caught saying about Nancy Pelosi, "I'm going to put a bullet in her noggin" on live TV.
Oof.
He was also found with a handgun and they call it an assault rifle, but it's a bullpup X95, which is like some like crazy looking sci-fi shit. They're cool rifles actually, but that's not.
Mhm.
It's definitely no hunting rifle.
Yeah. Right. Right. I know it.
And
I know
then
what that is from Call of Duty.
yeah, and then oh yeah, and Lonnie Kaufman. That's the dude out of Alabama that was busted with 11 Molotov cocktails. He had M4s in his the bed of his truck. Also, the way they found that
Yeah.
guy was they were looking for the bombs at the RNC, saw he had a handgun in the passenger side of the pickup truck, and so like, shit, we should probably take a look at this. And then what do you know? Hey, look, we found it was homemade napalm and mason
Yeah.
jars
And
and
that
M4s.
and that truck was sitting there for 4 hours. It was sitting there for 4 hours, and they didn't notice it.
Um,
Our security really needs to be beefed up. It needs to be looked at in a big way. What the hell? How did this happen? Um, we got really lucky.
yeah, well, I think we've
And then
been.
there was the Matt.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you good. Because I was gonna ask you something completely different. So
I think we've been barreling towards this type of event for a long time now. And this is why, I mean,
mhm,
since the beginning of the BLM riots and Antifa, when they started setting fucking cities on fire, anybody who supported those people back then, you look like fucking idiots now. Everybody who was saying defund the police, everybody was saying all cops are
mhm,
bastards, everyone that was saying that the looting and the burning was justified, you are all
right,
fucking hypocrites because look what you're saying now. When the
right,
tides are turned, when it's the other side doing it, they're evil. They're the ones that need to be put
right.
down by the police. That's like the
It's never
hypocrisy. That
justified.
hypocrisy is never ending on both fucking sides, the far left and the far right. And that is the one thing I can't stand the most in our political divide right now is that it's all this what about ism. Right, so like well,
Yeah,
Antifa fucking burnt down cities all goddamn summer, motherfucker. I don't give a shit what Antifa burned down. It was still wrong. It wasn't. It didn't make
right,
storming the Capitol a good thing either, right? It's
right,
it's
right.
I mean, this is what politics has become, and like this type of shit isn't over. Like if you think the insurrection on
Mhm.
Wednesday is the last time something like that's gonna happen, like in the near future, I'm sorry, but you are mistaken. This is just getting started, and where we're headed
Mhm.
is way darker than what I think anybody is even prepared for.
Yeah. So two things I want to respond to. Number one, there's a lot of people out there who are trying to make this connection to racism, right? Like everything else, right? What if all these Trump supporters are black people? They would have been
Yeah,
treated very differently from the police. Just look at what happened
yeah,
during the BLM
yeah.
riots, right?
Right. What
Well,
about?
no, because the BLM riots or protests, well, let's call them protests. Those were anti-cop protests. They were going out specifically to chant "fuck the police," to spit in their faces, to antagonize the police. That's what they were trying to do. So, I mean, there was the a very negative atmosphere from the get-go between the police and the protesters, right? And the police had to be there because that's their job. Even the looting of businesses was kind of not so much an intended slap in the face for the businesses. It was really an intended slap in the face of the cops because the people are saying, look, we're going to do what you're telling us not to do. You know, your job is to enforce the law. We're gonna break it just, you know, to say fuck you. So the BLM riots were anti-cop riots, you know, in its purest form. So of course is going to be, you're going to expect there to be much more of a tussle between the police and the protesters in that type of situation. And the other thing you were talking about, this not being over, Twitter is warning of another possible attack on the 17th, and another one possibly on Inauguration Day on the 20th. And that's part of their reasoning for kicking Trump off the platform, just because they don't want him to, I guess, be able to, you know, encourage people to meet like he was. You know, he was telling people, "I expect you to be there on the 6th. It's going to be a wild rally." You know, they don't want him to be able to do that again. But supposedly there is chatter of there being another event on the 17th. I don't know why the 17th, but that's the day. And supposedly people are saying to bring more guns, bring more weapons. You know, we just better hope that security is beefed up before then. And maybe this won't even happen. But who knows? That's what Twitter is saying. They're very concerned about something happening on the 17th.
Yeah, I'm not up to speed of what's going down on the 17th, but yeah, I guess they were trying to get people boots on the
There's not a
ground
lot
ahead
of
of time.
information out on it. Yeah.
The big event that I've seen planned for the 20th is the Million Militia March. So that's like
Yeah, I heard of
straight
that
up
too.
calling for militias to descend on Washington on Inauguration Day. And if that doesn't send a chill down your spine, that should.
Yeah.
I don't care what side of the political spectrum that you're on, that should terrify you. And people are going to show up. All right, there was in our Yang Gang Roundtable group chat the other day. It was talking about how about 75 million people voted for Trump. If 1%, if just 1% of that 75 million decide they're going to go do stupid shit, we're talking hundreds of thousands of people. It's like,
yeah,
an incredible amount, like enough to actually kick something crazy off. It's there's been all this stupid bullshit talk about. Well, I say bullshit in the moment. Everybody on Parler right now is talking about how Donald Trump's like declaring martial law tonight and is going to go arrest Nancy Pelosi and all this stupid shit. Well, that's definitely not going to happen tonight. I can tell you that. But on Inauguration Day, I think the potential definitely does exist for martial law to be declared because of just the wanton violence that potentially exists, right? I mean, like the potential for it to exist is a very real thing.
Yeah.
And Wednesday proved it.
Yeah. So I guess you support the Twitter ban. That being said, what are your thoughts on that?
All right. So, yeah, I think so. I don't think I support removing all of his posts from the platform. In fact, I don't think it's legal. I definitely don't think Twitter has the authority to do that. I mean, what's funny is if you go back like last month, there was like these 15 Democratic attorney generals that were like terrified that Trump was going to delete his own Twitter. And then that would erase the publicly owned historical record. Right. And the Twitter just comes in and pulls the plug on it. So like, where the fuck were these 15 Democratic assholes from last month that were all up in arms about preserving the historical record for the public? Where are they at now? They're like, nope. But God blessed Twitter for pulling this neo-Nazi off the platform. Yeah. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I ban him from using the platform. Sure, suspend his account from being able to post things. But yeah, like just like the fucking Capitol building belongs to me, and the way those people treated on Wednesday was completely disrespectful to me and the entire American public. Twitter deciding to deny me access to the publicly owned historical record is just as egregious. Maybe all
Yes.
right,
And of
maybe
course,
not just
early on in
as,
Trump's
maybe not just as, maybe I misspoke, overreached there just a little bit. It's a little different. However,
yeah,
it's public property, and they shouldn't be fucking with it like that.
right. Early
It
on
belongs
in
to me.
Trump's presidency, they did say that Trump's Twitter account, the statements that he puts out on there are official White House statements.
Right,
And
and people were
Twitter just
freaking out.
unilaterally, yeah, Twitter just unilaterally
Like people
decides
like
to erase it. Hopefully, after
right.
he's out of office, they bring back his past tweets, because we should be able to look into that, and just for research purposes. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, if they want to kick him off the platform, I don't like censorship. In general, I don't think people should be getting kicked off the platform. But Donald Trump, right now, is in a very unique situation where I do believe he poses an existential threat to the country. And if that's the case, that needs to take precedent over anything else. So him being kicked off the platform right now is probably the right call. But I agree with you. His past tweets should still be available to the public. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's another double standard, and it's more
Mhm.
hypocrisy from both extremes of the political spectrum. Like, if you remember back when I think it was right when Trump took office, Trump misspelled a word and deleted the tweet, and then reposted the tweet with the correct spelling, and people freaked the fuck out. That's a violation of the Presidential Records Act of 1978. You can't do that. And now
Oh,
Twitter just, oh, nope. Turns out that shit doesn't matter anymore, guys. The terms
yeah.
should have read the terms of service. You know?
Kafefi, kafefi.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think that was the word.
yeah. It was hilarious, hilarious. That became a whole thing, an everlasting meme that
Yeah.
will never. Like you can remove
Mhm.
Trump from Twitter, but you can never delete Covfefe. That is here to stay.
Yep, yep. um, and then there's Parler, the Parler app being removed from Apple, Amazon, and the Google platforms. Parler, of course, is like an alternative to Twitter, where supposedly they are 100% First Amendment free speech. They will not censor anything. They will not ban anybody from using the platform. Um,
That's not
how do
true.
you? I'm. It's not true.
No, I
Okay,
mean you
I don't
can't
know
go on
much about
Parlor.
Parler. Yeah.
No, I mean you can't go on there, dropping N bombs. Like there is moderation. They do
Okay.
remove posts. Like you can't also call for wanton violence there either. They will remove some content. But that is where like the wild QAnon shit, like the wild MAGA deep conspiracy stuff exists too. So if you want to
Yeah.
if you want to get a glimpse inside there, that's where you got to go as Parlor. And well, I guess if you don't have the app now, then I guess you're kind of out the club. But like there was people on there to,
Yeah.
I mean, like right before we started this podcast, saying that the Pope had just been arrested, and like I mean, crazy shit.
What?
Like yeah, it's insane. It's insane.
That's
But
fake, obviously. The Pope wasn't arrested, you're saying, right?
no, but yeah, his I
Okay.
guess his personal doctor died. His personal doctor died from complications related to COVID-19, and there was a large security presence in the Vatican. And then so like
Mm.
there's like one picture of like a bunch of black SUVs, and QAnon goes crazy. Oh my God, they arrested the Pope. Trump's enacting martial law. He's gonna rile up all the pedophiles.
Yeah, wow, wow, wow.
Uh,
Insane. So how do you feel about Parler being removed from Google, Apple, and Amazon?
It's a bad idea. You can't snuff it out. They are always going to find a
Mhm.
different platform. So yeah, but you shut down
Mhm.
Parler. Well, where's that going to leave? Well, they can make a new platform, which I think Trump will do. I think after Trump leaves office, he's going to make his own media empire. It's going to include social media, their own app, which they can try to remove from the app store. People can still access it, or you're going to push people to even further more to the fringe. So that's where,
Yeah.
4chan, 8kun, Daily Stormer, like those are the platforms which will welcome these people with open arms, right?
Hmm.
So I mean, every time you every time you whack the small over here, another one pops up, and eventually you're just going to push people further and further into their ideologies in an unhealthy manner.
Hmm. And
Because like, yeah,
one thing that.
just real quick, like we mentioned, or I
Mhm.
mentioned that there is moderation to some level and some extent of regarding violence and hate speech that do exist on Parler. They do not exist always on these other platforms. So
Mhm.
if you want,
Interesting.
I mean, like let's maybe let's be honest. There is a crazy level of racism that does exist in the fringe, MAGA and Q corners. Like that's indisputable. It's always been there on the right, especially uh, anti-Jewish sentiment, anti-black sentiment. That stuff is rampant on these sites. Like that
Hmm.
type of language and the call for violence against those groups is celebrated on these other channels, and that's what's not happening on
Hmm.
Parler.
Well, that's good. It doesn't happen on there. One thing that just really struck me when I heard that Parler was banned was that I remember a few months ago arguing why Twitter shouldn't be censoring people, and one of the criticisms that people always uh, one of the pushbacks I always got was if you don't like Twitter, just join Parler. Use a
Yeah.
different platform. That's capitalism. If you don't like one product, just buy the competitor. And now they're kind of big tech is kind of colluding in a way to make that impossible. So
Mhm.
you know, so I mean, part of the argument all along was these tech companies are so powerful. They're kind of like quasi governments in their own right. And
Yeah.
when they're getting together to enact policy, it does make it impossible for competitors to sprout up and be a more open platform or whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So
So,
I don't know how I feel about getting rid of Parler. Maybe temporarily, as we're in this transition, because we are in a really unique position right now. Um, but permanently, I don't think that would be the right thing to do.
you gonna you gonna buy the dip tomorrow? Buy the dip in Twitter?
What are you saying? You think it's going down?
I think the Twitter stock price definitely will be affected, and I
With
think
Trump off it?
I think I mean Trump, he was responsible
Huh.
for a lot of traffic on the site, and
Yeah,
I think
that's
I think
interesting call.
yeah, I mean it'll be reflected in the stock price momentarily. I think there will be a dip. It's not going to crash. Twitter's not going anywhere. They're one of the biggest tech giants on the fucking planet. Twitter is bigger than
Right.
Donald Trump. Like they can survive without him.
Hmm.
But
Oh, for sure.
if
I
you're
mean, there's also an argument to make. There's an argument to be made that Twitter will be a less toxic place without Donald Trump, and therefore users might stay on it longer or something. I don't really know how kicking Trump off would impact Twitter. If everybody migrates over to another app, the Parler or something, that would hurt Twitter. But if there's collusion among big tech like there is, making that difficult, then people aren't going to be able to go over to Parler or whatever other app.
Mhm. But yeah, I mean, it's also not just Parler. Um, there's a Gab. There used to
Oh
be
yeah,
Vote.
Gab.
I think Vote's dead now. Is it Telegram? Um, I mean, there's
Hmm.
lots of platforms out there, and I mean, they would have to seriously. I mean, if they would have basically the tech media giants, if they're really serious about this, they're going to have to like go to war with all these different
Hmm.
platforms, and I don't think that's a good way to go about it either. I mean, And, if you're in support of Section 230, well, or if you're against it, I think them censoring or removing people from platforms or removing access to certain applications, that is definitely making the case for removal of 230. And you're not doing yourselves any favors, or like all the cries and accusations of persecution against conservative points of view on the internet. Well, I mean, Google and Apple banning Parler is more fuel to that argument. Yeah,
it definitely does add fuel.
yeah. Which I think also there's the distinction is also never quite made between like the hard right, the hard like conspiracy nuts on the right, and then like general conservative points of view, like the
Mhm.
like pro life sentiments aren't censored on Twitter. Like you might get some backlash from people on the platform, but like that stuff's not like they're not hunting down pro life people and like shutting them up or shutting them out. Like an active
Mhm.
um like force against them like they are against like QAnon. Like they've been banning thousands of QAnon people off of Twitter like all year, all last year. Like
Yeah, right,
that's nothing new. Like Twitter's been dropping the ban hammer like crazy for, I mean,
Yep.
all last year. It's just
Did it work? I don't think so. They were
no,
all in the Capitol
no,
on
yeah,
Wednesday. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. When you
but
push these people off the biggest platform, they just migrate somewhere else, to some darker corner of the internet and become even more radicalized there, and convinced that big tech is out to get us. The Democrats and big tech, they're colluding, and it just further radicalizes people, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I encourage everyone. I encourage everyone to check out these dark corners of the internet to see for yourself what really is out there and how these people engage with each other and how they behave. Because if you've never seen it, I mean, I think it's important to be educated on what's happening. So, Parlor,
Mhm.
4chan, Acon, um, I think it's important just to see it with your own eyes, so you're not. I mean, so you're not like blown away when something like the insurrection happens, right? Like, oh, didn't see this
Mhm.
coming,
Yeah, right. That's a good call. One other thing that I think we could have talked about earlier, but we kind of skipped over it. I have it in my notes here, and I don't want to forget about this. Um, Matt Gaetz and some other people in Congress were quickly pointing their finger at Antifa, saying that Antifa had co-opted the Trumpers, and they instigated the raiding of the Capitol and whatnot. And there's even that story that you sent me about the supposedly they were saying that facial recognition software had recognized some Antifa members, and then of course the company that owned the software came out and said that that was a false claim. Um, what are your thoughts on that? You think it's possible that there were some Antifa people there, or were these all just right wing Trump people?
Sure. I mean, definitely might have been. I think what people fail to realize too
Yeah.
is, I mean, Antifa and the far right have a lot in common, and that's taking down the
Mhm.
establishment government. Like they have that
Mhm.
shared common interest. So if it's Antifa burning shit down or if it's MAGA storming the Capitol, it's the same fucking thing. It's the same fucking thing. There's no difference between the two whatsoever. So maybe could it have been Antifa? Maybe. It doesn't make a difference. But I mean, I tell you what, I don't think it was Antifa that trampled Roseanne Boylan to her death. I don't think it was Antifa that had the homemade napalm in his truck.
Right.
Sure. I mean, was Antifa there smashing windows? Maybe. All right, but it doesn't matter because they're the fucking the two sides of the same coin.
Right. All the people being arrested are pretty much hardcore Trump, QAnon people. You know, the people who died, the girl who was shot, unfortunately, she was a hardcore Trump QAnon person. Um, it's possible Antifa was there, but I think Matt Gaetz was full of shit when he opened his mouth and alleged that Antifa was inciting the chaos. There was at least one Antifa person there that seems like is true. He was there, but he was there to document stuff. This guy, John Sullivan, I don't know if you came across him in your, on the internet at all, but he's a
I did
BLM
not.
activist. He's actually the founder of an organization called, I think, Insurgency USA. And he was basically there with somebody else, somebody like a colleague, and they were just filming everything that was happening. Um, I didn't watch his videos at all, but supposedly he uploaded them to YouTube, and at times it does seem like he is kind of egging on the Trump people. Like when they were scaling up the walls, like I read supposedly he was like, "Yeah, go, we're making fucking history," something like that. He said, but whether or not he basically what he was doing caused all the violence and the chaos, that's a step way too far.
Yeah,
This would
absolutely.
have happened whether or not he was there or not.
Hmm.
You can't say that Antifa had anything to do with the chaos. I mean, this guy was definitely there videotaping it, which means there's a good chance that there could have been other Antifa people there. It actually makes sense to me that Antifa people uh, you said that there's a lot of parallels between the Trump people and I mean the far right and the far left, and that is true. They don't like the establishment, but the Antifa people, uh, they see themselves as anti-fascists, and they see the Trump people as fascists. So
Mm.
it would make sense to me for Antifa people to masquerade as Trump people and then do bad things because they'll make the Trump people look really bad. I can see that. It makes
Yeah.
logical sense to me. I'm not saying that's
Well,
what happened. I don't think it is what happened. All the people that they arrested were Trump people, so the evidence isn't going in
right.
that direction. And Matt
Right. But
Gaetz to say
well,
that that was way
but
too
during the
premature for
summer,
Matt Gaetz.
I mean,
Right.
during the summer when the big BLM riots were going down and cities were burning. I mean, the Boogaloo Boys showed up to a lot of those events too, right? I mean,
Yep.
there's plenty of images Boogaloo walking arm in arm with Black Lives Matter in
That's
the
true.
same cities where all this shit was going down. So that there is a shared common interest. So once again, it doesn't matter if
Yes.
Antifa was there. It doesn't matter if it was Antifa because man, a lot of people were engaged in that crazy behavior. And like
Hmm.
just because they started it doesn't fucking change the outcome of what happened.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's very true. And what's really the most concerning to me, looking at all of this objectively, is just the willingness to engage in violence to further your political ideology or whatever.
Hmm.
Both sides, the left and the right, are becoming more accepting of violence. There was actually an article in Politico that I remember reading a few months ago, and I had to find it today. I pulled it up. This is from October, and this article is saying that they did a study, and like they asked people, how do you feel about violence if your candidate loses? This is before the election. And here's a quote from the article. In September, 44% of Republicans and 41% of Democrats said there would be at least a little justification for violence if the other party's nominee wins the election. Those figures are both up from June, when 35% of Republicans and 37% of Democrats expressed the same sentiment. So we're becoming radicalized as a country. Both sides are starting to say, hey, violence, it's not that bad as long as you're punching Nazis, or, you know, as long as the election was stolen, then, we're justified. And that's incredibly alarming. How do we back away from that is going to be the, the biggest problem that the new administration has to solve. How do we calm the nation, lower the temperature, and just act like a civilized society once again? That's what I'm hoping that Joe Biden can help us get to.
Mhm. Yeah, me too. It's one thing that really alarmed me on Wednesday was seeing a lot of the way that the leftists reacted to the insurrection was. I think a lot of people were thinking it's like, man, like we should do this for Medicare for all. We should do this for the Green New Deal. Like people saw that and were like, that's what we got to do. That's how you get shit done in Washington is you
Wow.
fucking storm the Capitol.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah. It's
that only
scary.
is like going to further radicalize people's ambitions on what
Yeah.
can be achieved through violence. Which is,
There has to
I
be
think,
there needs to be more security there from now on, and if
yeah.
people start breaching those doors, you start shooting. I mean, at that
Mhm.
point, you breach the White House, you breach the Capitol, or any kind of building where there's government work being carried out. It's treason at that point. I mean, all these people committed treason by entering that building, by breaking windows, by desecrating it. And when you commit treason, if your aim is to overthrow our democracy, I'm sorry. I just, at that point, it's completely justified to use force to defend our democracy. So we need to have more cops, more guns, more security moving forward. The lack of police on site is just unacceptable and definitely needs to be investigated.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, but I think we're also dealing with a situation where like the the way that you feel about the subject, the situation, like the passion that you feel, the conviction that you feel, is exactly the same way they feel about their position as well, right? Like if you ask them,
Mhm.
these people that stormed the Capitol, like in the bottom of their heart, do they think that what they did was justified and necessary? I think almost all of them would say yes. That
Yeah,
they were
I
the
mean, I have no doubt that they do. They're radicalized, though. We need to purge radicalization, from our country. And I don't know. It's gonna take education. It's gonna take a leader who doesn't incite people like what Trump does. We need unity. We need um, but we also need more security. And,
Mhm.
and when radicalism starts acting up, put them down like the dogs they are. So it's a combination of more security and um, speak nicely, but carry a big ass stick. That's what the government needs to
Yeah.
do. They need to talk nice to both Republicans and Democrats, bring them together. But if either side starts acting out of control and wants to subvert our democracy, then you take out the stick and you start whacking the hell out of them. That's what I think needs to happen.
Bootlicker.
Yeah. Whatever.
I think
I
well,
mean,
well,
basically,
I we were talking about this kind of shit our very first episode. You know, when we were talking about Cleo Dynamics with Peter Turchin and Jack Goldstone. This is like been like the running theme of essentially of every episode we've ever done is talking about
Mhm.
these types of issues. And I think we don't often, I guess, discuss on how you solve them, but I think what Turchin and Goldstone, what they laid out and the conclusion that they came to is that it really has to be a more or less a toppling of the current elite structure, and like the standard of
Mhm.
living in this country has to dramatically be increased. That is the one way that you
Yes.
reduce radicalism in this nation is increased standard of
Yeah,
living.
I agree.
That's also one. I mean, god damn, like a huge missed opportunity we had with, you know, folks like, well, fucking Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, Zoltan
Mhm.
Itzvan. I say Zoltan kind of tongue in cheek, but he never had a chance at all. But I mean, forward thinkers that definitely would raise the standard of living to something that, I mean, we've had a terrible standard of living in this country since, I mean, well, I mean, everybody loves to point at like 1971 as like the moment of like when everything changed, and they have, I mean, they have a lot of that right. Yeah, the standard of living in this country has been on a steady decline for decades now, and that is the only way that we are going to get ourselves out of this mess. And so that's that. It's not just a $15 minimum wage. It's not just a UBI. It is really access to a
Yeah,
lot of things that people are being shut out of in this country.
no doubt. We need a lot of policy changes for sure. That will definitely stop the radicalization. But something that they could do from day one
Mhm,
is just end the divisive rhetoric, which I think is easy. I don't think Joe Biden is the most divisive guy in the world. The right likes to say that he is, but it's what they do. It's partisan politics,
mhm,
um, the guy's not divisive. I really think that in his heart he wants to heal the nation, and I admire that. um, and number two, at least this will play a big role in the near term, is they got to beef up security, especially on inauguration day.
mhm,
There better be, security better be increased at least tenfold. Um, and then once Biden does assume the oath of office, they need to move policy forward that's not left, not right, but forward. And they need to work with the Republicans. They need to get buy-in from everybody, and they just move the country forward and increase
mhm,
the standard of living for everybody. Um, yeah, things have been very stagnant since like the 1970s, essentially. When you look at the average wage versus like GDP growth. GDP growth has been
mhm,
going up and up and up, but average wages after you adjust for inflation has been pretty stagnant. It used to go up. They used to go up in tandem from like the end of
mhm,
World War II to like the mid 70s. GDP and the average wage in the U.S. They went up in tandem at the same time, and then there was this great decoupling essentially once companies started realizing they can offshore, they could shut down factories here and open them up in China essentially, and other countries where they could pay people less and just import the crap. Um, that and then that's also when computers first started being created and at first being used by the government and by the wealthiest corporations were able to afford these big computers. But of course computers evolved to what we all have today in our pockets. And what essentially that did, that also technology did away with a lot of jobs. Offshoring, technology, automation, um, maybe immigration a little bit has something to do with it, but compared to technology, it's like a drop in the bucket.
Mhm.
But yeah, the average wage in this country has been very stagnant since the 1970s. It's very true.
Right. I mean, the
And that
price of
needs to
housing,
change. That needs to
the price of
change. Yeah.
housing
People,
steadily
when,
increases. Price of education always goes up. The price of insurance, health insurance, always
hmm
goes up. And I mean, like,
hmm
so shit. I mean, if you get, you know, a 5%, right? So like they say that every year you should have a minimum 2% raise to keep up with inflation, right? At bare minimum. But goddamn, like the way that prices escalate in so many different ways, so many different times, like it's nearly impossible to keep up. And that's why I mean, I mean, we've heard it time and time again, but like it's like even pre-pandemic, 75% of Americans can't afford a $400 unexpected expense, right? That's
right,
that's what happens in a failed state, right? A failed
right.
country,
That's what happened
like
in failed countries that are on the verge of revolution. Right. That's you know France in the 1780s, essentially. That's Russia in the 19 teens. You had this giant gap between the wealthy and everybody else. And that's kind of where we've been heading towards since the 1970s. Because I mean, the average wage is staying steady, but the rich have been getting richer and richer, and everyone else is getting more and more pissed off. And we are becoming radicalized as a result. It's kind of a byproduct, I think, of this anger. Like, what the far left and the far right have in common is this idea that the system is not working for us. It's against the people, and there are elites in charge who are in bed with each other. The corporations and politicians are just writing all the rules, and it's rules that benefit each other at the expense of everybody else. um, those same lines of thought were essentially very prevalent in both France and Russia on the ease of their revolutions, and that's what's happening here. And it's not wrong. There's a lot of collusion and corruption in our government, um, and in our corporations, and shit needs to change before shit hits the fan.
yeah,
And I think we got a little bit of a taste of what could happen last Wednesday. So hopefully, the way I see it, the slate is essentially clean in a way when Joe Biden takes the oath of office, and he really has an opportunity to pull this country together and heal us. Um, but the policy needs to follow. If the policies don't get enacted to help out the bulk of the country, the extremism, the radicalization is just going to continue. It may retreat to the shadows, but it's still going to be there, and it will come back out again.
yeah, agreed. It's like there's some aspects of the platform of the MAGA platform. I'll say that need to legitimately be acknowledged as well as legitimate. Right? So when they
Yeah.
talk about the threat of the globalists and globalizations, that is a real threat to the standard of living in this country. When Bernie Sanders talks about the 1%, he's talking about the same thing. It's just a
hmm
different it's a different definition or a different word for the same definition. It's the
hmm
oligarchs that really have a stronghold on this country. And what is if we don't do something about that, then yes, we are destined for radical revolution in this country. And just go look at go to YouTube and look how the attempted revolution in Turkey went in 2016. That's what revolution looks like.
hmm
Revolution doesn't look like what happened on Wednesday.
Right.
Revolution, you have tanks, helicopters, jets, machine guns. That is exactly where this country is headed, and I fucking mean it with every ounce of my being. That is the direction that we are barreling down. We are doing nothing to pump the brakes on this insanity, like this crash course, like we're trying to make some kind of fucking Tiananmen Square situation like happen in this country. We're actively doing things to bring it into being. Like we are summoning this darkness into our country. Like as Marianne Williams say, with the dark psychic forces. It's
Yeah.
it's a legitimate threat. Legitimate threat.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. um, I like to try to be an optimist, so I'm gonna continue doing that, and just I hope things get better. I think they will, but there's a chance that they don't. So just I hope everybody is careful out there and prepares for the worst. Um, do we? I'm out of beer, so is there anything else that we haven't covered that we should? I'm also, more importantly, I think I hit every point in my notes that I wanted to hit. So I don't know if you got anything left.
No, I think we're good. I just say,
Yeah.
hard times create strong men, and
Mm-hmm.
I,
That's true. Arnold Schwarzenegger put out an awesome video that I encourage everyone to check out. And he said something that you just reminded me of: hard times. And he was talking about, he pulls out a sword, right? This big ass steel sword. He said it was Conan the Barbarian's sword. And he basically says, when you're making a sword, you stick it in the fire, you take it out, you bang it with your hammer, you stick it in the cold water, you take it out, you put it back in the fire, heat it up, take it out, bang it again with your hammer, and you do that over and over. And every time you do that process, it gets stronger and stronger. And that's a metaphor for the United States and the American people, So we're going through some tough times right now, but it should make us stronger.
clean your room.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So he's coming out with a new book soon, right? Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, 12 more rules for
You know when
life.
that's coming out?
Yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
highly
I'm excited.
anticipated. Uh, Follow up to the New York Times bestseller, 12 Rules for Life. Um, yeah, I'm really excited to hear more from him. I'm glad he's doing okay, or doing better at least. He had an interview with Matthew McConaughey that dropped today, which I thought was
Oh wow.
I haven't seen it yet, but interesting. Glad to see him
Yeah.
back in the saddle. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's something to look forward
Cool.
to in 2021 that could have a positive impact on a lot of people's lives. I know Jordan Peterson gets a
Cool.
lot of hate from people on the left for some stupid reasons, but you don't have to agree with a man on everything to know that when it comes to how to lead a better life, or how to probably live your life correctly, he's right on every point in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I am looking forward to reading that and then talking about it with you on this channel.
Yes,
That
yes.
will be a good conversation. Yeah. So, all right. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. And don't forget to hit the like button, share, subscribe. And hopefully next week, we don't have all that much to talk about, because that will mean that it wasn't a crazy week. I want some calm this week. I'm hoping for it. But we'll be back next week with another awesome podcast, regardless of the news cycle. So hopefully you check back in with us in a week. And yeah, I guess that's a wrap.
Yep. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. If you support independent journalism or citizen journalism, please give us a like, give us a share, give us a comment. Be much appreciated.